Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Hi, I'm Sara. I'm Kaila.
And I'm Josh. And today we are going to be going over another play by one of America's great playwrights in Tennessee Williams. This is the first time we've ever gone over a play by Tennessee Williams, and this one is A Streetcar Named Desire. And the discussion starter that I have for this one, which I'm really excited to get into this discussion, is in how this play was written, do you believe there is enough evidence to make judgments or develop impressions on these characters? Is this how you believe Tennessee Williams wants things to be?
I think so. I mean, we're given characters who do things very purposefully, and I think that you have to, just like in real life, you have to base people on their actions that you're able to see.
And I think that he gives us quite a bird's eye view, because we are we know enough to make basic judgments, but there's some slight details that are withheld from us and that we could only make, we only get what is from the present time and not background of each of the characters, aside from who's saying what, which is how it generally is in a play.
Right, yeah.
But I think that Williams really harps on it here. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make judgments, especially about whatchamacallit, the dude, what's his name?
Stanley.
Stanley, yeah.
Stanley Kowalski.
Maybe you could say he's a bad guy, I think pretty clearly.
Yeah, I think so.
I would say he's definitely a bad guy, especially after scene 10. That pretty much does him in.
Yeah.
But I think that there are points that he makes that are somewhat that have a reasonable explanation to them. But that being the fact that Blanche is a conniver, and that Blanche is manipulative. And that
just because Stanley's a bad guy doesn't make Blanche a good
Yes.
person.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
So, like, you can definitely have two conflicting, not great people.
That's correct. But Stanley's the one that makes this evident, because Stella is more of a mediator. I think that Mitch is another one who is a mediator per se. I personally think that Mitch is a representation of who we are as the viewer, or he's a close. I think he's a close stand-in to what we may be within the play, where he goes with everything that's going on. He is a bit misplaced because he'll sometimes abide to what Stanley is saying, but he also falls for Blanche and goes with her motions, and then confronts her when Stanley tells him certain information, and then reacts when he thinks he's been played.
Yeah, Mitch really, he just reacted off of what Stanley told him. I don't think there is any evidence otherwise of what Blanche was doing between, like, just Blanche and Mitch. Although it was all just off of word from his buddy, really.
Yeah, well, Mitch does say that he looked into it a little bit more and heard from a couple of different people, but it is all gossip, and that's the thing that it's kind of unfortunate about it, right? It's just, who knows what's going on.
With Stanley, it was between the information, and then when he saw the loads of clothes and jewelry in her suitcases, and allegedly Stella lost her part of the family fortune, and it all went to Blanche. So.
Yeah, I think that despite the snapshots we see of Blanche more through Stanley's eyes, like the suitcase full of jewelry and stuff like that, I don't think that there's a reliable narrator in this play either. So I don't. No. I think that everything has to be looked at through that scope. Like, I don't think that. I don't know. Part of me doesn't believe that Blanche swindled Stella's half of the estate anyway. Like, I think that Blanche is just like a horrible narcissist, really, and I don't think that.
That part is true, but she also she was taking advantage of, she was using Stanley and Stella's alcohol to tend to guests, because in scene 9, it was, she was playing off as if she was providing Mitch with these drinks, but it wasn't hers, it was the Kowalski's family's drinks. But I think that even if there was a reliable narrator, they did not have the ability to do so, because Stanley was such an overwhelming, abusive force that he bullied his way onto other people. He was abusive toward his wife, physically, psychologically, emotionally. He manipulated her to no end. And then you have Blanche, who also played at some strings as well. And Stanley and Blanche dominated the play, and it was just a matter of who was going to win out when it comes to their overlying influence. And because this is the late 40s, I think that Tennessee Williams definitely had this in mind. He had time and place in mind, that this was still male-dominated, and it was a commentary on the fact that that women were still in a situation where they would continue relationships with abusive men. And that in many cases they would continue to, that they were the ones that would dominate in getting into relationships over more people like Mitch, who were decent people, because Mitch was living with his sick mom instead. Because even Steve was also, he and Eunice were together. That was not a very healthy relationship either.
They kind of make it seem too like that's just kind of the way it is. Like, your dude hits you, you storm away, and then you come back the next day, because you're not going to find anything better, essentially.
In that day and age, if you left, that pretty much put a mark on you as a female.
And then at the end of it, launch, no one would believe her. She had no one left on her side. That was it, and she was taken away. And Stella had like the codependency on Stanley and almost on Blanche too, because that's kind of her, one of the only people there seeing Stanley for who he is, but at the same time she's depending off of Stanley for his livelihood and housing and money.
It's pretty much implied that Blanche had spent so much time crying wolf that between Stella and her circumstance and everybody else that was overseeing the situation, had a difficult time being able to believe her, what she had said, because of the many relationships that she was engaged. The call that she was putting in scene 10, where Stanley confronts her on that.
She never actually says anything, though, that we see on stage, right? I mean, she never says what happened with Stanley.
She doesn't make reference to it, but one of the interesting things within this piece, which is it makes it so atmospheric, but at the same time so haunting, is the use of the auditory. This is probably the best depiction that I've seen as far as the sense of sound is concerned and hearing, because of the music in the background. The ending of scene 10 is where Stanley he rapes Blanche, and that's the third time that they use the sound of the trumpets and the drums, which is generally used to reflect a man winning sexual dominance over a woman. This sound is used when Stanley and Stella are making out at the end of scene 4. This sound is used at the end of Steve and Eunice's banter. And then it's placed between Stanley and Blanche, and it's very, in a way, it's very eerie, because my first impression was Stanley can't even stand Blanche. Why is he going to want to have his way with her?
But that's not what rape is about.
It's about power.
It's dominance as opposed to
Yeah. And he says, like, we've had this date from the beginning. He has been intending to bully her into this since the beginning.
But I think the way that they do it is just, you don't. This is something that you don't necessarily need to describe, but yet it's so powerful the way that it's depicted. I know that in the movie with Marlon Brando and Vivien Leigh, you just see the mirror get smashed, and then you see Stanley carrying a limp Blanche onto the bed, which it's just it's all you really need. It's not like you don't need to, and especially for that time.
I mean, we know what happened there.
Yes.
I'm not saying that we didn't know what happened, but I'm just wondering if anybody else in the play after it happened knew, like if Blanche ever said anything about
it. Sounds like she had told them what happened, but nobody believed her.
And that's why they called.
Yes, she did.
Right.
She told Stella, and Stella said that if she were to believe her, she couldn't imagine staying with Stanley.
Right.
And Eunice said that you're better off not believing.
Right.
And Eunice seems like a relative. You almost want to think that she is trying to be a voice of reason, but she's also of the time where she backs off too.
Yeah. I don't think I got that impression from Eunice. I think I saw her more of like a almost like an instigator or an enabler in the men's bad behavior in this play. Like she kind of told Stella to go back to Stanley after he hit her, and she ran upstairs to him. And like I don't think that she was a voice of reason. I think she was more of an enabler.
First she told Stanley, go back to bed. This is what happens when you're hitting when you're pushing her around. But Stanley's able to talk Stella into coming back.
Right. But I mean, we see that her and her dude's name, whose name escapes us, thank you, going through pretty much the same thing. So it's just like kind of implied that this is how relationships work.
It would be interesting to see what happens from their lens, but from what we see within the play, Stanley is the overbearing force, even among his poker playing buddies. And even though, Steve and Pablo may have things to say, but we know that Mitch is relatively meek, despite the fact that he tried to stop Stanley with regard to Blanche being removed. But was there anything else that anybody?
But what do you mean by the second part of your question?
Which
is Tennessee Williams? Is this what he wants it to be? Is that what he said? Something like that.
do you think that he? do you think he only wants us to believe so much about the characters in how this is not necessarily... we're seeing this from a general point of view. We're not really getting into their psyche. We have an overseeing eye onto their situation, but not to the point that we know enough about their background. We really don't know about Stanley's upbringing unless he mentions things. We don't really know much about Blanche unless things are made mention to. I know it's interesting when they use the term Polak to describe Stanley. He's got a Polish ancestry, but it's a very derogatory term, and he even makes mention to it.
Yeah, he doesn't like it.
He shouldn't. That's especially back in that day when Polish people were they were incoming immigrants. They were very much seen the way that the population sees Mexican immigrants.
Yeah, so basically, being a man in that time period is about having power and having money. And then, through the whole play with the lighting, with Blanche, she doesn't want to be seen in the light. She's very self-conscious of her appearance.
Constantly bathing.
Yeah, the constant bathing.
And people have made mention to that being symbolic in a way, and that how she's washing away guilt and whatnot. But I'm not sure if I would. I don't know. I think that it's a reasonable explanation, but it would be something between that and how the play ends, the very last line about it being seven card stud, and how the game they play it without Stanley. Quite interesting. So.
Why? What does that mean?
The term stud often refers to a dominant male, but I looked something up online. If I come across the article again, I'll leave it down below. It pertains to seven-card stud being a game between at least two players, Stanley and Blanche being the players, Stella being the dealer, and how they're going back and forth as far as playing their hand is concerned. And even if Blanche has the leg up, Stanley, he ultimately wins his hand, but it really doesn't put him in a greater situation when all is said and done. So, I mean, at the very end, he's trying to comfort Stella again. Another thing that interests me is we don't know the much details about the child, the newborn baby.
Yeah.
The only assumption that can be made is, there could be a curveball that Tennessee Williams may have in mind, but the blue blanket gives me reason to believe that the baby was male, and that it becomes this is the start to another unfortunate cycle, because the males within this play the dominant males within this play are depicted as possessing a sense of abusive, overbearing dominance, too. So, but there could be something that is something that's left out. We do know that Stanley is quite a terrible father, because we don't really. The fact we could only tell by the fact
we can assume.
Yes, because the baby is resting, and instead of taking on responsibility, he's doing the same exact thing that he was doing in the first 10 scenes.
Right.
Playing poker with his buddies and expecting everybody else to do the chores. So, already, do we have any final thoughts?
I don't.
No.
No? How about ratings? 0 to 5 stars, half stars for omitted, Larry?
I guess I'd go with a 3.5. It's good play. It's an interesting examination of what life was like in Louisiana, I guess, in the 40s. I don't know. But it's kind of harsh, too, so I take off 1.5 points for that. But, you know, I mean, that's just Tennessee Williams, too. I mean, I don't think he ever wrote a likable character in his life.
What do you mean harsh?
It's just harsh. It's a harsh story. Everything about it is, it's rough.
Okay. Sara?
Yeah, no, I get what Larry is saying. I'd probably go. Can I do like a 3.75?
I guess that's passable.
It's not permitted.
Oh, darn it. Alright, I'll go 3.5. No, because I agree with Larry, because the whole thing is a very. It's not. Well, it's sadness, and it's not even like. I enjoy complex and flawed and tragic characters. And that was all of the play, basically. It was absolutely interesting to see how it would be to live in that time in a household. And I think that was the gist of it. So I guess there was less enjoyment out of it for me because of that, but I thought it was a really wonderfully well-written play. Yeah, so I'll say 3.5.
I too say 3.5. I think that there's a ton of cultural relevance, even to today's society within this play. However, I wouldn't describe it as fun.
I don't think it's supposed to be fun. I think that I'm giving this a 5.
Okay.
I think that there is so much to examine within this play. I think that it was brilliantly eye-opening in how we have this great sense of complexity within characters. I think that Tennessee Williams does a brilliant job laying out the scene, pretty much serving as the not just as the playwright, but as the director, where everything is laid out, and it's just a matter of how well the actor or actress can execute the character. I think that the atmosphere is amazing. I think that the characters are flawed in oh so many ways, and I think that it is just very it's not just complex in the general sense, but it's also very haunting and eerie as far as this being humanity, and especially during that time, is concerned. And I think that Tennessee Williams is really getting at the fact that so many horrible things are taking place, and yet people allow it to keep taking place, as far as abusive male figures are concerned, and actions of deceit. And yet, if you possess enough power, regardless of what that may be, you still have the ability to make calls in this world. Blanche, up until that point, was able to make her way through life and maneuver her way and get her way, but then she comes across a roadblock in Stanley, and both of them are pretty horrible figures. Stanley probably more horrible than Blanche, but ultimately Stanley got his way over Blanche.
I would say that Stanley is the bad guy. Blanche is perhaps mentally ill, right? She's been through a lot. We know that her whole family's died around her. Well, she's been alone. Stella left. You know, all that stuff that she says in the beginning is true. She had to face all of these hardships on her own without much help. And you know, she's obviously been through a lot of trauma in the past as well. We talk about what happened with her husband and everything. So I you know, she's unwell. I don't know if I'd morally characterize her, but I would say that she is.
She's unwell, but I also feel that she's an advantage seeker. I think she takes advantage of other people with their resources, with the money that she has access to, and
we don't know what kind of money she had. I mean, we really don't. Like, I mean, Stanley wants to make a big deal out of the jewelry, and she says it's all costume stuff and fake.
We don't know. But then again, all we know...
I mean, we know that he took those papers to his lawyer and nothing ever came of that. We do know that.
I think we mostly just know that she took the alcohol.
Yeah, we know the things that she did while she was there.
We also know that she was fired for having an affair with a 17-year-old.
And
that seems to be on pretty good terms.
And the relationship that she had, the way that she was interacting with the paper boy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we have an idea of the kind of person that she is. But at the same time, I think Stanley is more... He's clearly a bad guy. And you can see it at his face value. Blanche is much more complex.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I think that she's a much more complicated figure, but I would also say she's not a clean individual, which is probably why she's constantly trying to be clean in the bathtub.
Yeah, possibly.
So.
And she's destitute too, it seems. Like, I mean, I don't think that if she had a choice, financially speaking, that she would have spent all that time on, the couch and around the guy that she can't stand. I mean, she had nothing to gain from being there.
No, not really. Alrighty. If you're interested in checking out this play and everything else that Tennessee Williams has written, here is the definitive collection of, or the collected plays of Tennessee Williams, the definitive collection of the great American playwright. I got this Library of America edition. Thank you for tuning into this video. I hope you check out some more videos from our channel, and be sure to join us next time for another episode of The Roy Gladiators. For now, keep reading.